Hey guys, this is Ryan MacDonald speaking, and today I'll be previewing the 2021-2022 NFL season. I'll be going over division winners, conference winners, my Super Bowl prediction, as well as award predictions. Starting in the AFC, clearly the Chiefs have won the AFC now 2 years in a row, and again are the favorite this year. I mean, for good reason. They got everyone coming back. Mahomes, he's just straight out of a video game. There's really not much else to say. He makes throws that coaches tell you not to make. The dude's just a problem. Um, but starting in the AFC East, this isn't a bold prediction, but I got the Bills winning the AFC East. And the reason I have the Bills winning the AFC East is their receiving core. They have Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, and another guy I want you to keep your eye on is Gabriel Davis. Now, that's a very deep receiving core. I don't know. You can't double anyone. You want to double Diggs? That means you're leaving Beasley, Sanders, as well as Davis one-on-one. I also think the Bills really improved their defense. Their secondary is unbelievable with Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, and Micah Hyde. They have an improved offensive line, and the defense will be better this year because they drafted Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, and AJ Espinoza out of Iowa should also be much better this year. Coming out of the AFC West, again, not a very bold prediction. I have KC, and that's for an obvious reason. They got Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill still. Not to mention, they also improved their offensive line with the addition of Orlando Brown coming from Baltimore. The Kansas City Chiefs you saw in the Super Bowl will not be the same team you see again this year. They are a much better team than that. That was a shell of themselves. They had no offensive linemen against the best defensive line in football. They really never stood a chance. Now, the AFC North is a little more interesting. You have the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens, as well as Cincinnati, who has improved. But I don't think they're in a position to fight for the AFC North, not this year anyways. I have the Browns taking the AFC North, and the reason I have the Browns is their running backs are just simply insane. They have Nick Chubb, who in my opinion might be the best running back in the league. Kareem Hunt as your third down back. It doesn't get much better than that. Their wide receiving core is also insane. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Michigan, and Rashard Higgins, another slept-on receiver. Their tight end group includes Austin Hooper and a former high pick of David Njoku as their second string. Their offense looks to be very good this year as long as Baker Mayfield continues to improve. But with that offensive line and that run game, there's no excuse for the Browns to not make the playoffs this year and win the division. They might have the best defensive line in football now with Myles Garrett, who's the best defensive end in football, not defensive lineman, that's Aaron Donald. But they also added Jadeveon Clowney. Now, Myles Garrett is clearly the best D end in the league. So now adding Jadeveon Clowney on the other side, it's going to be a lot more difficult double teaming Myles Garrett. Because now that means you are leaving Jadeveon Clowney in single coverage. The AFC South, another tough division. You got the Titans, the Colts. I mean, those two teams, they're going to be battling all year for this division. The reason I'm going with the Titans is simply their offense. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill's been playing like an MVP quarterback for the past couple years, and that has been very underrated. Now, the only thing holding Tennessee back is their defense. I was not impressed this offseason. I don't think they made many, if any, additions to their defense, which was not very good last year, but I still have them winning the AFC South. Now, for the wild card, there's a lot of teams in the AFC that can compete this year. I mean, whether it's the Patriots, the Colts, the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Steelers, the Chargers, there's a lot of teams in the AFC that can be good this year. Me personally, the teams I have coming out of the wild card in the AFC are the Patriots, the Colts, and the Ravens. And the reason I have the Patriots is they're in the AFC East. So that's 2 wins right off the bat against the Dolphins. Not the Dolphins, I'm sorry, against the Jets. The Dolphins, they should be able to split, and in my opinion, they should also be able to split against the Bills. They have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. They improved at quarterback with Mac Jones. They got a better receiving core and tight end group with Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne. I think Jacoby Myers, their current slot receiver, he's their new current Julian Edelman, Wes Welker-esque. He's a stud. They have Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson and James White for the running back core, which is very deep. I'm very high on the Patriots this year, and that may be biased because I am a Patriots fan. But their defense, bear with me for a second, their linebacking core, Matthew Judon, Dante Hightower, Kyle Van Noy. Their secondary, once Stephon Gilmore is healthy, J.C. Jackson, who's a top 10 corner, as well as Stephon Gilmore, Devin McCourty. Jonathan Jones is another guy who's very underrated. He lines up one-on-one in the slot against Tyreek Hill with little to no safety coverage. He's that good and that fast. I also have the Colts getting a wild card spot for the AFC. And, I really thought the Colts could compete for a Super Bowl. And I don't think they did enough offensively. I'm not a huge fan of the receiving core, which includes T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman. I know Jonathan Taylor's a beast. I just don't like the receiving core enough to go all the way. But any team with Darius Leonard and DeForest Buckner on your defense, you have a great shot at winning every week. The Colts have a top 5 defense, and now they have a competent quarterback in Carson Wentz. They should be a playoff football team this year. And then my last AFC playoff team is the Baltimore Ravens. That injury to J.K. Dobbins, that obviously hurts. But Baltimore, they're always tough defensively, which again I think they will be this year. And Lamar Jackson has another year under his belt. They just re-signed Mark Andrews. They drafted Rashard Bateman out of Minnesota. He could be a stud. I just don't see a world where the Ravens don't make the playoffs with that defense, Coach Harbaugh, and Lamar Jackson. Now, I'm not very high on Lamar Jackson, but I believe he's good enough to get you to the playoffs. The 3 teams that I have barely missing the playoffs in the AFC, but wouldn't be surprised if any of them made it, is the Miami Dolphins. Their defense is legit. Unbelievable. Brian Flores is a great coach. But Tua Tagovailoa, I'm not huge on. I did not see enough in him last year. He was making a lot of mistakes. Now, he was a rookie. I just don't have the confidence. And he obviously can get better. But for this year, I don't think they have the receiving core. Just really the offense to compete with Buffalo or New England. I also have Pittsburgh narrowly missing the playoffs. That defense is legit. But they didn't do anything to improve that lackluster offensive line. Big Ben is now in his late 30s. They have a great receiving core. But with no offensive line protection, that's going to be tough to overcome, especially when you're playing Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, and the Ravens 4 times a year. The other team, the Los Angeles Chargers, I think they could surprise a lot of people this year and be great. But again, I have them missing the playoffs. I do. I think Justin Herbert's going to make a huge improvement this year, but in a division that includes the Chiefs, it's going to be a tough road for them. Now for the NFC. The NFC East is a joke. It's either going to be Dallas or the Washington football team that wins this division. The Giants, they have a good defense, but I am not betting on Daniel Jones to win anything. The Eagles are a complete crapshoot. They're revamping their entire team. They're in rebuild mode. So from the NFC East, I got the football team. And the reason that is I think their offense will be good enough. They just added Ryan Fitzpatrick with Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, who's a top 10 receiver. He is very good. If they can put up 20 to 24 points a game, they can be a good football team with that defense. With Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, their defensive line is just absolutely loaded. So I have the Washington football team coming out of the NFC East. Now, the NFC West, the most confusing division in football. I don't know if I've ever seen a division race this wide open where you could make the argument for all 4 teams. But for me, it's fairly simple. I got the Rams winning the division. They have arguably the best player in football, either 1, 2, or 3 in Aaron Donald. The dude's a menace. He gets 14, 15 sacks a year from an interior defensive lineman position. You just don't see that. He's getting double and triple teamed every play, and he's still putting up double-digit sack numbers. It's honestly absurd. And with the resurgence of Leonard Floyd on the other side, it just makes it even more scary. He had double-digit sacks last year. Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams, they have another great cornerback. But the main reason I got the Rams coming out of the NFC West is the addition of Matthew Stafford. They already had a good receiving core in Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Now they added Deshaun Jackson. They already had Van Jefferson. Matthew Stafford, he's a great quarterback. And with an elite defense and good wide receiving core, I mean, the sky's the limit for this Rams team. It really is. Now, the NFC North, I got Green Bay winning it again. I think Chicago, I think Minnesota, I think they'll both be improved. But again, in the division, as of right now, with Andy Dalton as the Bears quarterback, Kirk Cousins, how do you bet against Aaron Rodgers? Now, it's going to be interesting to see this year with the whole locker room to see how Green Bay plays with this whole offseason debacle with Aaron Rodgers. But regardless, they have the most talent in the NFC North. Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and Aaron Rodgers. It's just, they're going to be averaging 28, 30 points again this year. And no one from the NFC North is going to be able to compete with that. Now, the NFC South, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the division. And that's pretty obvious, seeing as though they have all 22 starters returning from their Super Bowl team. But the thing I want you guys to keep an eye out on this year is Brady now has a full offseason under his belt with his receivers and tight ends. That receiving core of Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, Mike Evans, Gio Bernard, Rob Gronkowski, Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller. I mean, they're only going to get better. It's scary. I think Antonio Brown, with another year, he's going to have a monster season. He's now back into game shape. Chris Godwin, people don't realize, he's 25 years old. He's entering the prime of his career right now. Mike Evans, he's only 28 years old. I mean, and now they're adding O.J. Howard back, who was running by safeties at the University of Alabama, as well as Rob Gronkowski. And then they have Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones. But the big thing is the addition of Giovanni Bernard. I think that's going to pay huge dividends. Now, Leonard Fournette did a nice job in the playoffs of catching passes out of the backfield, but you could see he was uncomfortable with it. And if you followed football, you know Brady's always had a running back that can catch the ball. From Kevin Falk to Danny Woodhead to Shane Vereen to James White. Giovanni Bernard is a great football player. He's just been overshadowed because he's played for the Bengals his entire career. You're about to see this year how good he really is. Now, their defensive line is absurd. They have Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaquille Barrett, Vita Vea, and Ndamukong Suh, with linebackers of Levante David and Devin White, who Devin White, he runs like a running back. I mean, the dude's just insane. I really do. I think Tampa's going to have a top 5 offense and top 5 defense this year. I mean, I don't even think their schedule is that hard. They came in second place in the division, so they don't get that hard of a schedule. I really would not be shocked if Tampa ends up going somewhere 15-2. Now, if they stay healthy, they have a legitimate chance at going 17-0. I know that sounds crazy, but this could be the deepest football team I've ever seen. Regarding the NFC wildcard race, I don't think the NFC is as deep as the AFC this year. But, there's a lot of question marks, especially with that NFC West. I think 3 teams are going to make it, but all 4 hypothetically can make it. So coming out of the wild card, I have the Arizona Cardinals also making the playoffs. I am not a huge Cliff Kingsbury fan. I don't think he's a great coach. But I think the group of A.J. Green, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, they drafted a few new receivers as well. I think they'll be able to make the playoffs. With Chandler Jones, Budda Baker, Arizona could be a sneaky team this year depending on how Kyler Murray looks. Now, I also have the Seahawks making the playoffs. And that's just because, Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll. I find it hard to believe a playoffs where it doesn't involve the Seattle Seahawks until I see it. And now this one may surprise some people. I have the New Orleans Saints as my last playoff team. And the reason that is, if you watched closely last year, Drew Brees was a shell of himself. Drew Brees was not the reason the New Orleans Saints made it to where they did. It's because they have a great offense around him and a great defense. I think Jameis Winston, in all honesty, could be a slight upgrade to Drew Brees this year as long as he manages to not turn the football over an absurd amount. The contenders I have coming out of the NFC, A lot of people are high on them, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I could see them being a playoff football team this year. I personally just don't have it. I don't think Jimmy G's a great quarterback. I think as long as he's the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, it's hard for me to make them a playoff team in that division. Now, Trey Lance could be the real deal, but from what I saw in preseason, he was inaccurate. I mean, he's just a rookie, and that was just the preseason. But I personally don't see the San Francisco 49ers making the playoffs. And my other contender that could make the playoffs out of the NFC is the Chicago Bears. Now, obviously, with the defense led by Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, they got studs on that side of the ball. Now it's a matter of how will Justin Fields look. I know Andy Dalton's the quarterback right now. I can't imagine that lasting too long. Can Justin Fields add a spark? Can he, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, can they finally get the Chicago offense moving? I don't know if in my whole life if I've ever seen a scary Chicago offense. So my AFC title predictions. I got the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Winning that game, I have the Buffalo Bills. I have them winning the AFC title over the Kansas City Chiefs. And the reason I'm picking Buffalo is because I just think Josh Allen's poised for a monster season. They were not able to run the football at all last year. He was actually their best rushing attack. So now if they can even just manage to rush for 100 yards as a team per game with a better offensive line and a couple of their running backs coming back from injury, I think Buffalo's really scary. That receiving core is extremely deep. I know I already mentioned that. With the addition of Emmanuel Sanders to already Stephon Diggs, who's a top 5 receiver. Gabriel Davis, another guy I mentioned. Watch out for him this year. The fact that he is their number 4 receiver is scary. Buffalo's going to be a scary team this year. And now, while I think KC and teams like Cleveland, they're going to be very good. They will. But I honestly KC, I see them regressing this year. I don't think the receiving core is as deep as it was in years past. Now, I still think they're going to be a fabulous football team. But in the modern day NFL, you need at least 4 to 5 legitimate targets to throw the football to with the amount of nickel packages that are being implemented nowadays. You can't just have 2 number 1 receivers. Your 3 and 4 got to be able to get open too. So Cleveland, again, their roster is absolutely stacked, loaded this year. I haven't seen enough from Baker Mayfield for me to push them over the edge and pick them to go to the Super Bowl. And for that reason, I have the Buffalo Bills. I think they improved in all areas. I think Josh Allen's going to take a step. I think Sean McDermott's a great coach. And I think KC's due for some regression. Now, in the NFC, my NFC title prediction is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Los Angeles Rams. And now, again, that's not a very bold pick. The reason I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I don't know in my entire life if I've ever seen all 22 starters return to a team. With the addition of Giovanni Bernard and a defensive lineman who the Buccaneers coaches are just raving about, the rookie Joe Tryon. I mean, you add him to that front 4 already, this team is just scary. You give Brady an offseason to get chemistry with his receivers. Tampa Bay is going to be a scary team this year. And the reason I got the Rams there, like I mentioned before, they have a top 3 defense, and now they have a top 10, top 12 quarterback in Matt Stafford. I really think the Rams are going to be a good football team, but in that NFC title, like the divisional round this year, I got Tampa Bay again over the Rams. And that is just because, all around Tampa is just loaded. Loaded. Their secondary, their linebackers, their secondary is probably the weakest part of their team. But when you got a front 7 like that, you don't need as good of a secondary. And now for the Super Bowl, I have Tampa Bay over Buffalo. I got Brady winning his 8th Super Bowl this year. He has the extra offseason to get right with his team, to get chemistry with his receivers. I think they're going to be a scary team. Now, Buffalo, I think they also have a very legitimate chance at winning the Super Bowl. But I'm not a huge fan of their current running back group with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. I think Josh Allen's an absolute monster. That offense, they have a good enough defense. I just don't see a world where they're beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, for my award predictions for Rookie of the Year, I got Mac Jones of the New England Patriots. And that's a product of volume, because he's going to be starting the whole season, all 17 games. So he's going to have a lot better stats than guys like Justin Fields and other rookie quarterbacks that aren't starting right out the gate. But other than that, I think they have a great offensive line around him. They have a great defense, and they have capable playmakers. They also have Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick, you know, to take care of them. So for that reason, I think Mac Jones will be the Rookie of the Year. Would not be surprised if it was someone like Najee Harris out of Pittsburgh, though. He is a monster. Now, my Rookie of the Year on the defensive side of the ball, again, the kid's an absolute beast, but it's another volume thing. Micah Parsons, the kid out of Penn State, the linebacker for the Cowboys. He's going to be starting right out the gate, so I think he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. The kid's just a freak. He's a stud. The best free agent signing, in my opinion, this offseason, and there hasn't been a lot of games yet. Obviously, it was just the preseason. But wow, has Matthew Judon looked unbelievable for the New England Patriots. They needed a pass rusher. I think he's a great signing. I think he's a very underrated signing. And I think Baltimore's going to feel his loss this season. My MVP, I have Josh Allen winning the MVP. You've heard me this whole show talk about how good I think he's going to be. They have an improved offensive line. They have a great receiving core. And he can run the football. I would not be surprised if Josh Allen runs for 500 to 700 yards this year. People don't realize how fast he is because he's 6'5", 250, 260. He's a top 5 fast quarterback in the NFL and makes throws like Mahomes. I mean, the dude's ridiculous. As a Patriots fan, I hate that Josh Allen's in my division, but I got to give credit where credit's due. The kid's an absolute stud. And then the last thing I wanted to add today are my best bets for week 1. And you've heard me talk about these two teams a lot today. So I'm going to trust my opinion going into the season, and this is what I'm going to roll with. I got Tampa Bay minus 8.5 over Dallas. And the reason I think that's a safe bet is because Dak Prescott has not played in over a year. He has not played quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys for a long time since that ankle injury, which was gruesome to say the least. They don't have Zach Martin tonight, who's probably the second best guard in the NFL outside of Quentin Nelson. That's a problem when you're playing that Tampa Bay Buccaneers front seven. So I don't see how the Cowboys put up more than 20 points with Dak Prescott just coming off of injury. You're missing your best offensive lineman, and you're playing arguably the best defensive front in football. Now, on the other side of the ball, like I've mentioned, Brady's had the whole offseason to get right with his receivers, get the chemistry down, which he clearly already had in the playoffs last year. These couple months, this offseason is going to make all the difference in the world with guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. He already has the chemistry, obviously, with Gronk. But it's going to be scary. And for that reason, the Cowboys, really their only defensive addition was Micah Parsons, the rookie I covered. But him himself is not enough to stop that offense. There's no one on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that you can double team. If you double Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, or Antonio Brown, you're leaving the other two in single coverage, not to mention you have Giovanni Bernard coming out of the backfield and either Gronk or O.J. Howard lined up as your tight end. Dallas has a really bad secondary. This has blowout written all over it. Tampa playing at home. I got Tampa Bay 34-17. And then my other best bet of week 1 is the New England Patriots minus 3 over the Dallas Cowboys. Not the Dallas Cowboys. The Miami Dolphins. And the reason I think that's a great bet is because the Patriots made a lot of additions this offseason, obviously. That's not the angle I'm looking at it as. Tua Tagovailoa is still a young quarterback, and in Belichick's eyes, he's still a rookie quarterback. Belichick feasts on rookie quarterbacks, especially someone like Tua Tagovailoa, who just did not look comfortable at all out there last year. So for that reason, I don't know how the Dolphins' receiving core is going to get open on that New England secondary. Again, Miami's got a great defense, but I think New England's offensive line and run game, they'll be able to establish it. And I just think New England's too strong for them, especially at this point in the season. I'm not a firm believer in Tua. I think New England's got a very underrated defense. So does Miami. But Bill Belichick versus a young quarterback with Josh McDaniels and all those playmakers on the other side, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. Give me New England minus 3 and Tampa minus 8.5. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. That was the first episode of the show. I'm going to be doing this weekly. I'm an avid NFL fan. It's really not even for the following. I just enjoy doing this in general. I can't wait to see in a couple months how my predictions have played out. Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. And other than that, wow, it feels like it's the holidays right now. I cannot wait for football to be back. I cannot wait. I hope you guys enjoyed this again. And finally, the NFL is back.